Peach Pundit, the podcast, is a conversation filled with the personal opinions of the people who are participating. Any view or opinion expressed belongs only to the person who expressed it and not with anyone with whom that person is professionally affiliated.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Peach Pundit, the podcast. I am the married version of Jason Pye. I am joined by Scot Turner and Buzz Brockway. Guys, it's good to see you both. Scott,
He found a woman that would actually marry him. That's so impressive.
He's a whole new Jason.
And no, getting used to wearing a wedding ring again, which is, this one's actually really interesting. And Scott, by the way, I love your T-shirt. This ring is actually really interesting because I got this because I didn't want like a stereotypical marriage band, wedding band. So I got one from Manly Bands, who is not a sponsor of the podcast, unfortunately.
But they should be.
This has T-Rex bone in it.
Whoa.
So
Fossilized T-Rex?
Yeah. Yeah, it came with a certificate of authenticity, all that stuff. So, which I thought was really cool. And Emily did too, because we both really love the movie Jurassic Park. And I bought it. But no, we had a really great wedding ceremony. And, as I mentioned, Van Jones was officiating our wedding. Van did
Don't
great.
hold that against Buzz and I, audience. Audience, don't hold that against Buzz or me. It's a whole pie thing.
You got to look past politics. Van's one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he's a genuinely good guy, even if you don't agree with his politics. Which, frankly, we need more of that these days. Liking people who you don't necessarily see eye to eye with. But but then
I endorse that. Yeah.
Then Emily and I went to Disney World. We were the grand marshals of the Disney parade that Tuesday,
awesome.
Tuesday afternoon. And
How did that work? I mean, did you they tapped you as you were walking in and said, "Hey, you want to do this?"
Yeah. So it was really weird. So let me start with how I'll keep this as brief as possible. So we went in that morning. We were doing the Keys to the Kingdom tour, which is a tour you can purchase. They take you behind the scenes of Disney. You go down into the tunnels, because for people who don't know this, Disney World, the Magic Kingdom, is the second floor.
Yes.
The first floor are the tunnels. It's where the people who the cast members, as they call them, where they get ready, where they chill. They have break rooms. It's this huge complex. So we were going to meet with our group, and we ended up striking up a conversation with one of the girls who was behind the counter. Her name's Mary. And we ended up telling her, we just got married, we're on our honeymoon, all this stuff. And she apparently really liked us because she told one of her colleagues, and Disney apparently employs people, cast members, who go around the park and look for people to be grand marshals.
That's cool.
To do certain things. So this guy finds us as we're going into lunch inside Liberty Square, I think is what it's called, just outside of the Haunted Mansion. And he approaches us and he's like, "Did you guys talk to Mary this morning?" And we're like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, awesome. You guys just get married?" "Yeah." "You're on your honeymoon?" "Yeah." "Well, do you want to be a grand marshals for a parade this afternoon?"
Twist my arm harder.
Yeah, he gives us this official invitation. When at 2:20 we met him over by the Tiana ride, and he gives us these Mickey ears to commemorate it that say Grand Marshal on the back and all this stuff. And it was, and so
you guys are you guys are like Reagan's heroes now. Is
so
that,
Reagan wasn't,
that you weren't already, but now you're just like the coolest people she knows on earth, right?
Reagan wasn't with us, obviously, because it's our honeymoon. So, and Reagan wouldn't have, we stayed at the Grand Floridian, which she is scared to death of because my idiotic nephew, who I love and cherish, told her that a kid was killed by an alligator.
True story. That did happen.
Yeah, it did happen.
But you don't tell young girls that, right?
Yeah, you don't tell a then 8-year-old about that.
Right.
Reagan's, but so she's scared to death of Grand Floridian for that reason alone. Never mind that the Polynesian, where she loves to stay, is just across the Seven Seas Lagoon.
Same alligators.
Same alligators. So no, we told her about it. She thought it was really cool. She's just jealous more than anything else that we got to go Disney, and we went without her. So we have promised her that we will take her back to Disney before the year is out. I have I don't know if I should mention this. Yeah, no. This is why I post on Facebook that like Mickey Mouse should be a dependent of mine on my taxes. So I don't know if I should say this, but Secretary Collins, his wife is a travel agent, so I am reaching out to her.
You need those volume discount. You know those.
Yeah,
yeah, because if
I volume discounts and stuff.
Disney
there.
Vacation Club.
Yeah,
no, we stayed in one of those rooms last year, and those rooms we bought a package from one of our neighbors, and that room was. It's sweet.
I had a membership. I sold it last year. We got great value out of it.
I'd known. You did tell me about that.
Yeah. We sold it for a good price. I mean, we made a little bit of money on it overall when you consider how many times we stayed there too. So
yeah,
it turned out to be good investment.
Well, Scott, we have some things to talk about. We have a little bit of a different format this week than people are used to. We're just trying it on, see if it works. But before we dive into our individual picks for the week, Scott, let's pay some bills.
Peach Pundit has an anonymous Patreon who would like to invite you to learn more about the Alzheimer's Association. The Alzheimer's Association leads the way to end Alzheimer's and all other dementia by accelerating global research, driving risk reduction and early detection, and maximizing quality care and support. No one should fight Alzheimer's alone. With your help, no one will. Learn more on their website, alz.org.
Attention, Georgia. Are you concerned about excessive government regulations impacting our business and economy? The REINS Act, spelled R-E-I-N-S, aims to enhance transparency and accountability by requiring legislative approval for costly new state agency rules. This ensures that Georgians have a stronger voice in the regulatory process. Join the movement to protect our state's prosperity. Visit GeorgiaReins.com. That's Georgia, REINS.com, to learn more and take action today, along with our friends at Americans for Prosperity. Thank you again to all of our Patreons for supporting the podcast. You too can be a Patreon by heading on over to patreon.com/peachpundit, signing up for one of our tiers today. And if not, just give us a like and subscribe to the podcast. Recommend it to a friend, and we'll appreciate you too.
So I should note that when I was watching the markup in the House Rules Committee of the budget that passed the House last night, they mentioned the REINS Act because apparently there's some language in the budget that talks about the REINS Act. For whatever reason that made it into the budget escapes me because that's not something that can clear the Senate under the Rules of Reconciliation. But Democrats really took aim at it. But I happen to like the REINS Act a lot.
Yeah.
Love the REINS Act. Love legislative oversight of the executive in this rulemaking stuff. And this is something Republicans have been fighting for 40 plus years.
Anything that restores congressional power is a good thing in my view. But
Amen.
Buzz, we're going to start with you. I know you have your news story of the week. So you are going to talk about some education legislation that's working its way through the legislative process.
Yes. So you folks know my day job is with the Georgia Center for Opportunity, and education is something that we work on. So two pieces here that I'll bring up early. First of all is Senate Bill 171 for Jason Anvitarde, a good friend, and introduced this bill for us. And what this is we're calling it the Math Open Enrollment Bill. All right. So what we're talking about, when young folks are in school, they generally, you take math, obviously, you get to 8th grade, you take algebra, and then there's a separation. Okay. Students who do extremely well in those go, when they get to high school, they move on to geometry, trigonometry, and on up to calculus and advanced AP classes in math and those sorts of things. But a couple of states, so it's in Georgia and many other states, it's an opt-in. Okay. You have to want this. Your teachers have to agree that you should move on and do this. Space is limited. Okay. So they call out students. And this is not an indictment of the system. This is just what's done. There's a handful of states, 3 that I'm aware of, the blue state of Washington, the purple state of North Carolina, the red state of Texas, who do it a different way. If you make a certain score, if you're proficient or above in math, you are automatically enrolled in algebra, in 8th grade algebra or even lower grades. You're automatically enrolled in advanced math when you get to high school. And what they're seeing is in Washington, they testify, the people in the teachers and so forth say, being a blue state, this is very important to them. Now we have in Washington lots of African-American students in higher math, lots of Hispanic students in higher math. I hate to put it in these terms, but that's the truth. That's what's going on. It's not just the white kids and the Asian kids who take advanced math in Washington. They test the same sort of thing happens in Texas and in North Carolina. It throws the doors wide open. Suddenly there's hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of kids across these states that, first of all, when you challenge kids, they rise to the occasion. The teachers can teach this stuff. They can do this. And you're opening up the eyes of these young students to say, I can do this. I can do advanced math. And now it obviously, it opens up the whole world of the STEM professions to these students. But also, even if they don't, now they go into life with the confidence that I can do this stuff. I can tackle tough stuff, and I can do it. And so Senator Invitarde has introduced this bill. We've got bipartisan sponsorship in the Senate. In these other states, it's passed with just huge bipartisan support. And I will mention, so it's going to be hearing Monday morning in the Senate Education and Youth Committee that Senator Billy Hickman chairs. It's on the schedule there for Monday morning, early in the morning. So I'll be down there testifying. And I applaud Senator Invitarde for introducing this and look forward to favorable passage of this as it moves forward. And I just think, guys, we live in an AI world. If our students, we need as many students who can handle advanced math as we can possibly get in this country, so we don't lose our, we don't lose the AI battle to China, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the reality of it, right?
Our competitive edge, and
yes,
I actually wrote about this to some degree. It was more over the Independence Center. I was more writing about the H-1B visas and why there's such big support for those visas. And I mean, our scores are in math 28th amongst OECD nations.
Yeah,
that's terrible. We're 12th in science, which is obviously that's a lot better. But having being 28th in math is awful. And the reason, the people who are excelling, who are getting master's degrees and PhDs in STEM fields in the United States they're immigrants. They're people who are coming from overseas.
Yes.
And it's you want to know why there's such a big demand for H-1B visas. It's that's the reason.
I just heard Jason Pye say this was an America First piece of legislation. That's what I heard.
Don't you dare put
if that.
Well, I mean, I between the lines.
Whatever it takes to get the bill passed, I'll take it.
I know the history of that word, and I don't like that phrase, and I do not like that phrase just because of the history of it.
Look, math is so important because it not only is it open up career fields to students that otherwise would have been boxed out of that, but it also teaches logical thinking. When I was in high school, one of my least favorite classes was geometry because of all the proofs. And it was, if this is true, then that, and you had to go through several steps to prove a statement. But in my later career, when I became an engineer at Hewlett-Packard, I actually sent an email to my high school geometry teacher thanking him for punishing me with those proofs, because my career became, if this, then that, if this, then that, if this, then that, at Hewlett-Packard. It was a logical way of thinking that I did not have naturally, that it was created in a math class in high school that paid my mortgage eventually. And so that's great because that translates into all kinds of other ways of thinking. If you're good at math, you're good at critical thinking and analyzing data that comes to you and being able to sort through fact from fiction. So it has a cascading effect that's positive for our society as well.
So what attracted me to this idea, I was at the Excel in Ed conference last fall. Well, really two things. I was at that conference and there was a presentation about this, and a lady from North Carolina was talking about how they got this through. And then I read a book called Math Mind. And the premise of this book, it's a young lady who she inadvertently showed up at an advanced math class in high school. And the teacher kind of looked at her and goes, "Hey, little lady, what are you doing here?" And I don't know that you're going to make it in here. And she just kind of in herself, just thought, screw you, pal, I'll show you.
Right.
And she taught herself math, essentially, because and the whole book talks about how in her opinion, we don't teach math well in this country. And it starts with the premise that, you think about this, right? If we have a young person in third grade who's struggling with reading, we don't say, you're probably just not a reader.
Right. Yeah. Right. We don't give up on kids.
Right. We said, we know how to teach. We said, no, we just got to work with you. And, if there's an issue like dyslexia, whatever, we know how to deal with those things even, right?
Right.
When a young person struggles with math, we say, well, you're just probably not a math person. That's preposterous. And that's her claim, is that every student can learn math. Now, that doesn't mean they're all going to become,
engineers.
PhD. And right. That's not what she's saying. But we can all.
They might end up at UGA instead of Georgia Tech. Oh,
I didn't say that. You said that.
Up.
They have a fine math department at UGA. Not as good, but it's fine. But we don't accept that. And when it comes to reading, and look, the state of Georgia is to be applauded. A couple of years ago, Bethany Ballard and Billy Hickman in the House and the Senate took the lead, and we have restructured how we teach reading, and it's in the process of being implemented. It will work because you take a look at Mississippi. Mississippi, if you look at the NAEP scores, I'll be blogging about this for my job soon. Mississippi's climbing up the rankings, and their math is improving too, because once kids can read, they can comprehend math better. So we have put us on a different trajectory for reading. Now we need to do the same thing with math. This is one step. There's other stuff we need to do, but this is one step, is to pass Senator Anna Vittarde's bill. So you folks know that one of the hats I wear, I'm a commissioner on the State Charter School Commission. And since I've got there, we've noticed this problem. It's been a long time since a local school district authorized a new charter school. It's a rare thing.
They don't want the competition.
Yeah. And right. And so that means that it's left to the State Charter School Commission to approve schools that really, some of them, it makes sense if the school zone is going to be statewide, if the school zone is going to cross multiple jurisdictions, makes sense, to come to the State Charter School Commission. And that's the purpose. That's what we talked about back in 2011 when we crafted the constitutional amendment that eventually passed. The idea was the commission would be an appeals body to put pressure on local school districts to approve good charter petitions. But what's happened is the local districts have just gotten away from, they don't approve them. And so Senate Bill 82 by Senator Dixon, a number of other senators signed on to it as well, is an attempt to incentivize, there's some carrots and some sticks in there for local districts to approve charter schools. And here's the reason why it's important. Two big reasons. First of all, charters should be a part, I believe, of every local community. Every school district in Georgia should have at least one charter school. Okay, and these are places where you can do all sorts of things. They can be STEM-focused charter schools. They can be arts and science, arts-focused charter schools. They could be just charter schools that operate a little differently, where students who maybe struggle in math and reading go, and because of the more flexible school day, they can get back on grade level. All sorts of different things, right? In Gwinnett, there's a state charter school. It's one of the best schools in the state, elementary and middle schools in the state of Georgia, called, I'm going to screw it up, Yi Wong School of Language Excellence. And you go to that school, you come out of that school learning math from Singapore, the Singapore method of teaching math, which is what all the kids at MIT went and learned. Okay, at Georgia Tech, that's what they grasp math.
There's a reason Singapore ranks near the top, if not
Yes.
the top. And I think they might be the top in math.
Yes. And these kids learn Korean and Mandarin Chinese. So I was in their classroom watching them, little kids speaking, and I didn't understand a word they're saying, but the class was in Mandarin, the next class was in Korean, the other class was in English. So it's fantastic school. 99% of those kids, it's one of the top, the milestone score for them is 99.1, one of the top schools in the state, right?
Incredible.
It's a charter school. So every community should embrace this. So Senator Dixon's bill is meant to incentivize that. As you might imagine, there's freak out and pushback. How dare you have sticks in your bill? It should only be, and forget carrots, we need just heaps and heaps of ice cream and cake given to us, money coming out of our ears, and how we will do what we see fit. Just give us the money and your kids and leave us alone. So that also is set to be heard Monday in Senator Billy Hickman's Education and Youth Committee in the Senate, and I applaud Senator Dixon for bringing it forward, and I hope it passes. Because the other thing I should mention, Scott, you remember this when we were in the legislature. Every year we were trying to bring about more parity in funding for charter schools because of the constitutional amendment and the compromises that had to be made. Charter schools get less money than local district schools. Charter schools do not have the ability to tax you like your local school district does. Charter schools struggle to pay for facilities, right? So we have brought that up, but what that means is it's cheaper in the state of Georgia to run a charter school than it is to run a traditional district school, okay? But the burden is shifted to the state budget. And so it's a growing portion of the state budget, which, just being honest about it, we've got a bunch of budget hawks, and they look down the list. Why is this part of our budget growing 20% a year? Well, we're carrying out the mission that the Constitution and the law and the charter law set out for us, which is to approve good charter schools all across the state of Georgia. So we need locals to get in the game and approve good charter schools so that the state doesn't have to approve as many. So that's my speech.
Well, so Scott, you got anything you want to add?
No, I don't. Buzz does great work here. Expert in the field. Tremendous. Well done. Hope it passes.
Same. So transitioning over to my pick for the week, I actually have two. The first one is the dishonorable Congresswoman from Northwest Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who said this week that federal workers don't deserve their paychecks. And she said this during a House Oversight Subcommittee hearing. I think it was during a subcommittee, the DOGE subcommittee, which she chairs. And so being that the Congresswoman from Northwest Georgia said this, I decided to spend some time today looking at her legislative track record. And when I said some time, this took me about 3 minutes because I think everybody's going to be shocked to know that Congresswoman Greene hasn't really passed that many things. Let me just start by saying that none of the bills that she's managed to get out of the House have become law. One of those, there are two that have, she's introduced two pieces of legislation that actually passed the House. The first one was a post office renaming. Okay. This was the United States Courthouse in Rome, Georgia. She wanted to name it the Harold L. Murphy Federal Building in the United States Courthouse. I am not speaking to the merits of naming this complex after Mr. Murphy. I don't know who he is. Does he deserve it? Sure he does. But she couldn't get a post office renaming out of the Senate.
Oh, no.
Out of the House.
Okay.
This is not a controversial thing to rename a federal building. I feel like most of these sail through without any opposition, so that's problem number one. Her other thing was a very high profile thing. She did get the articles of impeachment against Alejandro Mayorkas through the House. She did do that. That went nowhere in the Senate, as was expected. So
the Democratic Senate wasn't going to impeach.
That's
a
correct.
Cabinet member under the Democratic president.
And as Scott and I discussed before we came on the podcast, impeachment has lost its luster as a viable political option. Not because, I think the second impeachment was entirely justified. The first one, probably not.
No.
I said that at the time, that this is probably not a good idea because this guy's going to do something eventually that's going to warrant impeachment, and you're going to have blown your load on it.
Yeah, and even the second one, they handled it incorrectly. They rushed it. They didn't allow time to build the case. They tried to build the case afterwards with the Gen 6 commission, and they just fumbled the ball.
Well, you had 14 days. You had 2 weeks. Now, someone like Matt Gaetz has said, Congress can pursue impeachment after a president leaves office. And that I think that I don't recall ever looking into that, if that's actually true or not, or is viable, or whether the English common law tells us something about it. I had never looked into it, but they had 2 weeks before he left office. It was there to make a statement. And look,
Yeah.
but impeachment has been cheapened as a viable political option. It's just the way
Correct
it
me
is.
if I'm wrong, but going all the way back to George W., maybe even before, Congress is sworn in before the president is. And like there's always some person gets sworn in and said, I'm introducing articles of impeachment against whoever the president is. And that's kind of been the case, as I recall, Obama.
Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced articles of impeachment before Biden was even sworn in.
Yes. And Trump in the first time, and there's probably somebody who's introduced one again is in Trump 2.0, right? So
yeah, I haven't seen it if it is, and I try to track legislation at least a few times a week, if not every day. But I did want to note a couple things about this. She's gotten 2 passed out of 61, and that doesn't include amendments that she's done. From taking off the filter here, she has had 2 amendments agreed to in the committee of the whole, which is just the fancy word for the whole House. So they were both agreed to by voice vote, which basically means that they weren't controversial enough to warrant a recorded vote. So, but she's introduced 91 pieces of legislation. 61 of those are actual like bills or resolutions. So if you want to take a broader look at this, not just picking on Marjorie Taylor Greene, but let's look at the entirety of Congress. They get paid $174,000 a year. Do you honestly think that you deserve your pay?
All right. So I got to push back a little bit on this because I chafe at this because this happened to me in the legislature. I got bills passed every year. I wasn't the author. I attached my bill to somebody else. I had something slipped into a conference committee report. I was very effective at getting law done. But if you look at my record that way, I would be deemed an ineffective legislator, which I didn't feel like I was ineffective any single year that I was down there because I had an impact in ways that are not measurable by that metric. And so I chafe a little when we start talking about whether or not lawmakers are earning their paycheck. And I don't mean to be the defender of Marjorie Taylor Greene 2 weeks in a row, but here I am. It's not just about Marjorie, though. You cannot look at legislators and their batting average as a metric for their effectiveness. There are a whole, and I'm not saying that she's effective in the ways that I was either, but there are things that you can do as a legislator that make you very effective if you're killing bad stuff too. And that is not something that gets measured because you might kill it in the back room before it even gets a committee hearing, or you might alter it in a way that the public isn't necessarily aware that you had a hand in it. But the presence there of the legislator that does that is effective. It is an effective way of taking on the role of legislator.
I am not going to push back on that too hard. But let me just remind you, we're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think that is true of many members of Congress who might be lead co-sponsors on something, who might give a bill to another member because they don't have the capacity to run it, but they say they'll be active on it other ways. I think that's certainly true. I do not think it's her, though. She's a member of Congress who legislates by clickbait.
Well, I'm not going to defend that.
Yeah. No,
and you're talking,
there.
And you're talking about a member of Congress. You're talking about, and let's specifically speak to Congress, because I've said this before. And before you push back on me, let me explain it fully. This past Congress, the 118th Congress, I ran the final numbers yesterday, was the least productive Congress available for tracking on Congress.gov, going back to 1951. So they passed fewer pieces of legislation than any other Congress. Now you may say, well, I don't want Congress to do things. Yeah, but you might not want Congress to do things, but I think the question is you might not want Congress to do destructive things. The best way to look at this is even if there are laws that exist that you hate, to get rid of those laws, to stop them from being enforced in the future, regardless of whether this administration or the last administration enforced them or not, is irrelevant. They're still on the books. You want Congress to pass laws. That takes an act of Congress to do that. So you may not want Congress to do more things. I certainly don't want Congress to do more things. But at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, effectiveness of Congress, the effectiveness of members of Congress is judged by how good they are at their jobs. This Congress, well, the last Congress certainly wasn't very good at their jobs. This Congress, thus far, we are a little over a month in. Do you know how many bills they have passed out of both chambers that have become law? One.
Yeah.
The Lincoln Riley Act.
The Lincoln Riley Act. There are others that may have an opportunity to become law. We'll have to wait and see. Some of those are good. Some of those are bad. With all that being said, I don't think Marjorie Taylor Greene is one to lob bombs. As much as she hates federal workers, fine. There are plenty of federal workers who are good at their jobs. By the way, your staff are federal workers.
Yeah,
right.
The staff of the
she
other
have like something like 6,000 federal workers in her district.
Yeah, I'd have to look and see. I have a call sheet on Article 1 issues. She's not on it because I don't give a damn what she has to say about pretty much anything. That being said, you know, there are federal workers in every congressional district. Some have more than others, but you know,
she also called for the post office to be privatized, which I'm all for.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, let's keep in mind here that the Postal Service is a constitutional responsibility. Like that's not just that is in Article 1, Section 8. So, but that being said, the post office loses. It's not viable.
Not only is it not viable, they're failing miserably in Georgia, and they have been for an extended amount of time across multiple administrations.
They suck up here too, but the biggest problem to any sort of postal service reform is, oddly enough, rural members of Congress, including many members from Georgia.
Because federal employees vote for them.
Exactly right. The other thing I wanted to talk about real fast, and this is kind of a little bit of a more in-depth conversation that, by the way, real fast on that previous part, I said this in text earlier, Peach Pundit the text thread, but I didn't get a chance to say it because I didn't remember until just now. If I had my way, members of Congress, like, we would bring their salary to zero. The only reason we can't do that is because of the 27th Amendment. And like,
oh, those pesky amendments to the Constitution.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have to like the Constitution, all of it, even the parts you don't necessarily like, and that's just the way it is.
You could always work to change it too.
Oh, that's true. I mean, well, in the 27th Amendment is actually how that became law is hard. It's just so unreal because that was one of the original amendments that passed.
Yeah. Ages and ages ago, it was just sitting there, and some like kid in school decided to make it a project to get it ratified,
and it got ratified in 1992. One man with courage makes a majority. The other thing I want to talk about is not limited to DOGE, but it's more what I see as a looming constitutional crisis. I don't think we're there yet, but I think it's coming. And DOGE has discovered some $65 billion in what they have called wasteful spending. The DOGE website itself is very hard to, like, it's not very transparent. Like, yeah, they're posting links to stuff. They're posting dollar amounts, things like that. And those are not always accurate, as from what I've found out. With that being said, they're canceling all these contracts. Only about $500 million, actually less than $500 million, are for DEI initiatives. A lot of it is, I see $1 billion. There's another website I've been using. It's doge-tracker.com that it's a little bit easier to navigate. And they actually list the top areas of savings. They put $1 billion in education with no specificity or anything like that. $810 million in research and development, $549 million in technology systems. Then DEI is fourth. Environmental programs are at $287 million. And then consulting contracts, $63.2 million. There's a lot of news subscriptions to like Politico Pro and CQ Roll Call, and which arguably are not justifiable. I think hiring a staffer to be your legislative liaison may be a little cheaper in some cases. But I do have a concern here because Article 1, Section 9 makes it very clear the power of the purse falls in the purview of Congress. And when you have an administration, and every administration runs afoul of the Constitution at various times. That's true. Look at Joe Biden and student loan forgiveness.
Amen.
Yeah, there was no authorization to do that in law. The Supreme Court said as much, which is why it was struck down.
Right.
And I think also the separate thing, which is apart from the constitutional argument, is I think it's insulting to those of us who worked our asses off to get where we are today, who either got a degree without significant government help and paid off their loans, or people like me who busted my ass twice as hard as my peers who don't have a college degree. So
millions and millions of Americans don't, right, who have a college degree. So why should they subsidize?
Congress appropriates the money. And and these contracts in most of these instances fall within the purview of the agency that contracted them out. In some cases, they may be tied to a specific appropriation, and others they may not. But that being said, the Constitution matters, and I am worried. What I see is the unavoidable train wreck of when the Supreme Court ultimately decides it rules against this administration, or even a appellate court, a circuit court rules against this administration, and they ignore it. In some cases, we're seeing some conservative members of Congress, people who prided themselves as constitutional conservatives as recently as a couple of years ago, who are not only, they're encouraging it.
Well, as recently as the Joe Biden decision to do the student loan thing, they were against this type of action by the executive.
Yeah.
Yes. And I implore people who listen to this podcast, because I think this is one thing the three of us, even though, like, I know I'm a little bit more out there on social issues, but when it comes to the Constitution and when it comes to debt and deficits, I don't dick around. And here we are, we're seeing the inevitable constitutional crisis that's coming. And if you care about the Constitution at all, it's the Constitution. One man is not greater than the Constitution. The rule of law either matters or it doesn't. And we're creating a situation right now where we're spiraling towards it, and nobody, well, I should say few, particularly in Congress, are speaking out against it. You may be worried about a primary challenge. You may be worried about speaking out against this administration. You may be worried about losing your precinct chairmanship in your local Republican Party, whatever the case may be. This is bigger than that. And if you can't find it in yourself right now to speak out, then get out of politics, because there are good people who are concerned about this, whose voices need to be heard. And I'd rather their voice be heard expressing concern about the constitutional crisis that we're spiraling towards, over people who are sycophantic and can't take. I'm not going to say what I was going to say.
But so, I mean, look, Jason, I'm worried about that too. But there's a remedy, a very simple remedy. If the president wants to spend money a different way on different things, then guess what? You do what Speaker Johnson started to do yesterday. You pass a budget framework, and then you start negotiating. What does that mean? We're not going to spend money on that thing over there. We're going to spend money on this thing over here that President Trump wants. And then Trump has the authorization to spend the money the way he wants it spent on priorities that he deems to be priorities instead of what was being spent before. There's a process to do that.
Yeah, and
so you don't have to have a constitutional crisis. Do Congress step up to the plate, do the frickin' jobs. The president step up to the plate, do his frickin' job, and submit a budget to Congress and say, this is what I want to spend the money on. And Congress says yes or no, or we're going to tweak this or tweak that, and you make it work, and you pass a frickin' bill, and the president signs it. That's all that needs to happen.
So,
right?
and just for clarity, so the budget...
And just because you have tiny majorities doesn't mean you can't get it done.
Yeah. The budget sets the top lines. So it says how much you can spend for security or non-security, or defense or non-defense. The appropriations bills are where the specifics are ironed out.
Right.
So
right pass the budget, pass appropriations bills that give Trump what he wants to do.
I have a really hard time accepting, though, that Congress appropriated money through U.S. aid for comic books in Peru.
I'm not. No. I'm not defending any particular line item. I'm not.
No, because that probably gets down to because look, we know from the Chevron, Congress has ceded its authority to the administrative state, and that's been going on for decades, right?
Yeah, that's
so probably what happened was they said, "Oh, USAID, here is whatever amount of money, and go spend it on making our allies happy." And so it gets over there to the AID, and they say, "Oh, here's a way to make people happy. We'll put on help create a comic book in Peru.
So my concern about the foreign aid and to some degree USAID, though, is in a world right now, and we're seeing this play out in sort of real time as it relates to Ukraine and Russia. We are creating a vacuum in foreign policy right now.
No doubt.
So China's run circles around us. I think I've said this on the podcast before. China's run circles around us through their Belt and Road Initiative, their investments in countries in Africa where there's a lot of critical minerals, and other places around the world. So they're getting access to those critical minerals that we are not because of their investments in these countries. USAID had the only real program that we have as the United States to counter the Belt and Road Initiative. And so not only are we surrendering or creating a vacuum in that regards, we're also creating a diplomatic vacuum as well. Where, I mean, look at the vote this week, was it this week? Yeah, as it relates to Ukraine, the resolution before
at the UN.
Yeah, China.
Yeah, that's one of the most embarrassing. I got to be on. That is the kind of thing that is a stain upon the reputation of the United States that will haunt us for decades.
100%.
It will.
But China abstained.
Yeah.
China abstained. That leadership void will be filled by people who are hostile to us, by countries who are hostile to us, and we will have no one to blame but ourselves. So I talk about the constitutional crisis. Foreign policy is another crisis that's looming too. And wait until we the 25% tariffs with China, or with Canada and Mexico, and then the 10% tariff on energy coming from Canada, which includes oil, by the way. That's kicking in on Monday the 4th, this Tuesday.
Right when we were going to use the Canadians to help us import eggs.
Yeah. So, we're pissing off our allies. What are we doing?
Well,
this is another reason why I don't like the America First language. Not to mention that it's racist history, but also in pro-Nazi history, but also, I'm not calling Trump a Nazi.
Thank you for clarifying.
But what I am saying,
the America First folks back in like the 50s or whenever it was, when it first,
it was World War II. I mean, that's what,
40.
So it started, I guess, even predating World War I, but it ran its course.
It's possible, though, it means something different now to people.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
but
sure.
The history,
devil's advocate.
The history's there, and you can't ignore it. And I don't want to argue that, because I need to go to you, Scott. But the one,
this was supposed to speed things up.
It was
just creating 3 long monologues.
Well, the problem is you guys already violated the rules. You're supposed to have one topic, and you both had multiple. So you already violated the rules. We're 47 minutes into the podcast. We haven't finished what was supposed to take 30 minutes.
Look. I'm gonna deal with it at home because Emily's already asked me when I'm gonna be done. That's my wife.
I'm trying to help your marriage right now. That's all. Wrap it up high, land it more safely than we are seeing airplanes land right now.
Thank you for the words of encouragement, Scott.
Not upside down, as we say.
Isolationism comes with a real big price, and the price is I think more than we want to pay. And with that, I will go to Scott, who has 5 minutes to tell us his one story.
On Friday, the governor got his signature piece of legislation passed out of the Georgia State Senate. That is tort reform, on a vote of 33-21, with only one Republican voting no, when several Republicans were tempted to vote no against the governor's tort reform package. The governor had told the legislature no amendments. Yet on the floor, one of his own floor leaders, Bo Hatchett, amended the bill, which allowed Republicans who were riding the fence between yes and no to decide to go ahead and vote yes. But before that happened, our friend who's been on the podcast here, Cody Hall, who's an advisor to Governor Kemp, appeared on Politically Georgia and indicated that any Republican who voted against the governor's tort reform package would face a Kemp-backed primary challenge.
Ooh.
Now, This is where I say to you, dear listener, because I know many of you are legislators and some of you work for the governor and some of you may even be a governor. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? This isn't a collection of things that I think. This isn't a collection of things that I said. These are things that legislators and longtime lobbyists told me. And I don't have a dog in the fight when it comes to tort reform. I'm not working on the issue. I understand it, but I'm not working on it. If it fails or passes, it's no skin off my nose, but I know the governor is spending a ton of political capital. And so I heard from longtime lobbyists. Sometimes they were former members who served in the General Assembly. I've heard from a couple of former members, but I heard from a lot of people who were Republicans who are currently serving. And one told me, and I quote, "I heard that same type of threat over the school choice debate, and the governor didn't follow through. Everyone who voted no on that got reelected." He went on to say there's a lot of questioning about why he would go that far. It projects weakness to me. That projects weakness seems to really be the thing that a lot of people zeroed in on, because you'll hear it repeated in these quotes. It probably means he doesn't have the votes to get it to his desk, the lawmaker told me. A former Republican member who's now a lobbyist said this is likely to backfire. The only people who genuinely care about tort reform are lawyers and doctors. Everyone else doesn't even know what the debate is about. And whenever I was threatened as a lawmaker, I would vote no just because I didn't like to be threatened. Another longtime lobbyist who is not working on the tort reform issue told me it just projects weakness. Why would he head into his final 2 years in office at odds with his own side, especially since he's considering running for higher office? There are already a lot of hurt feelings about how he's wielded line item vetoes in the budget. This just seems like piling on. Another told me, "Don't threaten me. I'm now going to reevaluate whether I should vote yes." A lot of my colleagues are pissed. It probably created a lot more no votes than yeses. And if he wants to come to my district on this issue, I'll probably win by a bigger margin by pointing out that I don't kowtow to the executive branch. This wasn't just a strategic error. It's an example of executive overreach. He's acting no better than the Georgia Republican Assembly with their purity tests. And it goes on and on. Now, it's debatable about whether or not it had the desired impact, because the bill did pass.
Right.
Only one Republican, that was Colton Moore, voted
Right.
no. And now it moves to the House, though, creating a testy setup. And the House today announced that this was going to go to a special subcommittee of the Rules Committee set up just for this bill, which hasn't happened in over 10 years, when the speaker dropped an ethics reform package and assigned it to rules, and it went through a subcommittee of rules. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, whether or not the bill will be amended, and how the pro side for tort reform, which are made up of a lot of business interests, chambers of commerce, real estate agents, those types of folks, business owners, if they're more influential, or if it's the trial lawyers, because this is an us versus them when it comes to these two groups. And that is what I had for my one topic.
Yeah, so I'm hearing some rumblings that there's some discontent among the lawyers, the trial lawyers, who would normally be way out front battling this, and they're not, the rank and file members are not necessarily happy with their representation at the Capitol, because it sailed on through the Senate with very little change.
Right.
That's another factor. We'll see. Do they mount a vigorous opposition now that it's over in the House? Does the bill substantially change? That'll be interesting to see.
I have nothing at all to add. I just generally speaking, I mean, we talked about this before, and I was very sympathetic to what Ed Lindsay had said about the issue. So I will just leave it at that. Scott, go pay a bill.
Scott complied with the rules, and Jason and I openly and flagrantly ignored them and did whatever the heck we want.
We've heard your feedback, listeners. We're trying to shorten the podcast. We're trying.
Conservatives Concerned is a network of political and social conservatives who question the alignment of capital punishment with conservative principles and values. Our programs include educating conservatives about the failed death penalty system and mobilizing them to bring about its end. We come to this issue for a variety of reasons. Some believe that small government and the death penalty don't go together. especially when we compare the high costs of capital punishment to life without possibility of release. Some don't trust the state to get it right. We already know that some innocent people have been sentenced to death, and for others, it may already be too late. Some believe that the death penalty contradicts our values about protecting life. Find out more at conservativesconcerned.org.
Golden Retriever Rescue of Atlanta, GRRA, is an all-volunteer, tax-deductible charitable organization. They are dedicated to providing veterinary care, comprehensive evaluation, and foster and adoptive homes to Golden and Labrador Retrievers who are abandoned, mistreated, neglected, or left in shelters throughout Georgia. We encourage you to visit their website grra.com and help connect people and dogs that need each other in their lives. You truly can make this world a better place by helping find homes of gold for these golden-hearted pups.
God, Emily wants a golden retriever so bad. And it's to the point. I mean, like, I'm saying no until we get a fence in the backyard, and we're, after paying for a wedding, that's like not high on my list of priorities right now. So yeah,
John Vestal's in the chat. He says he can hook her up.
John, if you reach out to my wife, I will be furious. I will not only will I defriend you on Facebook, sir, I will block you from every form of social media I have. I will send your emails to spam.
I think he's bluffing, John. I think he's bluffing. Make it happen.
No,
Make it happen.
Don't you do it. Don't you do it.
It would bring so much joy to you. They're great dogs.
They 100% are. I mean, like, it's John, stop. I am this close to losing my shit.
John's telling him how it would happen in the chat for those who can't read the chat.
Like, Tracker, my dog Tracker, he is the sweetest boy, but he is enough. And he's a year and a half old. He's the sweetest thing in the world. But I have picked up one too many poops in the house. So now we're moving into our last segment of the podcast. This is our quick hits. I said it right.
No,
even though
it's not. No, we changed it. It's
quick
no longer
hits.
quick hits. It is now quick hicks.
Yeah,
I see that. But I'm ignoring you.
No, it's quick hicks.
The
It's
trend
quick hicks
continues.
segment
Yeah,
of
why-
Peach Pundit
yeah.
podcast.
Once again, I'm ignoring you. So 2026 election rumor tracker update. So there's Kemp, McCoon, Taylor. More to be added soon for Congressional District 1, AG, Attorney General. And we're working to verify some of these. So Scott, tell us what those updates are real fast.
Buzz had a post about Kemp saying after session, he'll make a decision on running for Senate after session. We got word from Josh McCoon via social media. He is not running for Secretary of State, so we moved that to the debunked. But Candace Taylor announced her candidacy for Congressional District number 1, and I'm so excited. I can't wait. All the content we're going to have. But we do have several more rumors we're working on. And so if you don't see them on there, and you can feel free to reach out, we'll try to verify them. But we have several we're trying to chase down.
As it relates to Candace Taylor, I mean, her boy, that crazy like Nazi apologist, or not just Nazi apologist, but the guy who said Hitler had visionary leadership while holding up a copy of Mein Kampf.
Yep.
He got a little bit of an exposure in the Senate Judiciary Committee when Kash Patel was going through his confirmation hearing. So
Had some proximity to Patel. Had some proximity to that guy too, didn't he?
Yeah, he did 8 different segments on that guy's show. And I'm not saying that that's disqualifying in this day and age. It should be, but she's part of his network, for God's sakes.
Yep.
So yeah. But moving right along. Rich McCormick says slow down after heated town hall. Now, Scott and I did have some disagreement on this in Peach Pundit, the text thread this week. But for those of you who haven't heard, Rich McCormick faced a heated town hall. The one clip that we have seen, and a lot of this was over DOGE, federal employees getting fired, things like that. But one of the clips that we've seen is this one particular woman who stands up, and she really gives it to him and gives him a piece of her mind. I found out something about her. She is actually directly related, or she's a direct descendant of the founding father. I think it was James Madison. And I think she might James Monroe, and she might have a tie to James Madison as well. So interesting person indeed. Her voice irritated the hell out of me. But
she had that fake Southern accent thing she was doing. She was
yeah,
putting on the show is what she was doing.
Emily and I were watching. It came up last night while Emily and I were watching CNN. And I was like, God, her accent, the way she talks, her cadence, great stuff. I'm not saying whether I agree or disagree with her. I'm also concerned about the DOGE cuts in federal workers, but just because of the constitutional side, the federal worker side, I don't know that you should have a sociopath be the person who lays off people.
Well,
because
when it comes to fake accents, though, for us in the South who are around genuine Southern accents, when you have a really fake one like that, the most disingenuous person that could be.
We can sniff it out in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
don't do
yeah. Well,
like
I think
the guy that used to play on Walking Dead, who the British guy had the worst. He's like, he was a scientist, and it's like, oh my gosh, nobody here talks that way, man. Plural. Yeah, you're so bad. McCormick, listen, Rich McCormick showed that he was listening to them because he went on Politically Georgia, looked straight in the camera and said, yeah, we need to slow down and make sure we're doing these things, because there was another person at that town hall who made a really valid point about, hey, you laid off the people who were working on the avian influenza thing in the middle of us having an epidemic of that. Yeah. And who's controlling the medical response to avian influenza now? And so he's like, okay, so kudos to Rich McCormick from me anyway, for listening, even though it looked like it was a whole big staged thing where the left came in to try to embarrass him. And I think he responded really well.
Yeah, I was actually with Congressman McCormick on a tour of a Bitcoin mining operation on Friday. So, and he was in good spirits. He was not beaten down. And so I know people are trying to portray what he said as like, oh, he caved in. I think you nailed it, Scott. I think he's hearing from some of them were constituents, some of them were not. But one thing I think that I heard today on the Commentary Magazine podcast, y'all know I listen to that. There's a lot of complaints by congressmen who are supportive of DOGE and trying to reduce the size of government and all that sort of stuff. When they're going to lay off a bunch of people in their district, maybe let the folks in Congress give them a little heads up so they don't get blindsided at a town hall, or come in the morning and wonder why the heck is our phones blowing up, and a bunch of my constituents just lost their job. So a little coordination.
Yeah,
would be good.
I would just say the size and scope of government has to be reduced. I would caution people that this is something that's going to be done. Like, I don't know how permanent this stuff is, because this is one administration, the next one's going to come in.
Well,
but I will say, once again, having a sociopath be the one leading the charge of this, someone who is incapable of showing any empathy at all. This is point number one. Is probably not the best person to do this. Point number two is be careful with the accusations of astroturfing, because that was leveled against the Tea Party movement and everybody brushed it off. No, though, these are real people. I would be careful about doing that here too, because we don't know whether these people are just being bussed in and there's this astroturfing.
We do, though. It wasn't that they were bussed in. They were organized by left-wing groups to come and target. They targeted it, and that's well known at this point. There are chat groups that were formed, and that's come out. Eric Erickson's done a whole big expose on it.
Yeah, but here's the thing: AFP did this, Freedom Works did this, Tea Party Patriots did this, Tea Party Express did this. Every Tea Party group that existed in the early 2010s, they bust in people, they organize people. So just word of caution. You want me to go to the next one, Buzz? Or you had something you wanted to say?
Well, I'll just say one thing that concerns me. It's all well and good to reduce the size of the federal workforce. Not one policy has changed. All that's happened is fewer people are doing the exact same thing that the government's always been doing. And so we haven't had a change in direction. Maybe that's coming. I hope so. We should regulate. There's a whole lot of regulations that need to go, and therefore there are less bad things that the government is doing to us. But DOGE has not touched that at all. Yeah. DOGE has not done anything about the entitlements, nothing. So it's window dressing thus far. Maybe it's coming. I hope it does. But
so our next story, Joy Reid lost her job, but Stacey Abrams has her back. I know there was some traffic on this on the text thread about this. didn't even know who Joy Reid was.
Oh.
So my exposure to MSNBC has been limited over the past, like, I used to watch Morning Joe before, like, that went full progressive, but that ended, like, in 2015. But my exposure to MSNBC was limited to, like, late night TV when we were on our cruise a couple of years ago, and not having any other options but Fox News, and I wasn't going to watch that. Cable news is just brain rot. Let's just be honest about it.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know who Joy Reid is, she's the lady who reacted in complete moon-eyed disbelief when Ann Coulter said in 2016 that Donald Trump was going to be the next president of the United States. And she had her own show on MSNBC, and she labeled Donald Trump saying he was a Nazi, and that if he got reelected, that we would be Nazi Germany, and she had no other consequences for that. But apparently MSNBC's seen enough. They've let her go. But Stacey Abrams is there for her.
Yeah, good for her. I mean, look, Joy Reid, TV hosts get fired all the time, and I know she was on there on a tearful video about how this is unbelievable. She should follow the Tucker Carlson path and just start recording videos and be even crazier than she was before, and just go totally off the deep end and go tour some Russian grocery stores and talk about how awesome they are. Just it's working great for Tucker, so why not?
Venezuelan. The left goes for Venezuela.
Exactly. Yeah, go down.
Or Cuba.
Go down.
No, the Cuban medical system. You can go down there and tell us how awesome it is.
Well,
she could do that too.
She could follow Michael Morse.
Name Moore already did all that. Then
his documentary Sicko, which he went down and praised the Cuban healthcare system, which is not what it seemed in that documentary, quote unquote documentary. What is the first rule of the Georgia GOP Fight Club?
Throw coffee in your political opponent's face. That's the first rule, apparently. That's what happened over in Columbia County. A longtime activist over there who was actually the former president of the Greater Columbia County Republican Women's Club and current fundraising chair of the Columbia County Republican Party was arrested for throwing a cup of coffee in Columbia County's 4th District Commissioner Dewey Galeas, and she was arrested. She has her very own Trump-like mugshot.
Is it on T-shirts and yet, or I'm shocked that I haven't got a fundraising email. I mean, I still get fundraising emails from Rudy every now and then, Giuliani, who. So
I get those text messages.
I'm kind of waiting on one.
No matter
from
how
her.
many times I delete and report as junk, I still get them.
No, I see to make them multiply.
The the Alabama cheerleader, has injected herself into this situation as well.
Oh, has she?
Yeah. It's all a mess. It's a mess.
What side is she on?
I have no idea. I just see a tweet that was copied and pasted and posted in the post, and with the threat that Sophia Farouk will be featured in my next email.
Well, that's the Cobb County Fight Club.
Oh, though that's the fake AI.
Yeah, that Jason, lady at the mass precinct meetings in Cobb County faked an endorsement video from Donald Trump, causing her opponent to say, "Well, if he's for her, I'm out." And then somebody had to come along and say, "No. It was AI."
So Buzz is super excited about the summit that we didn't know we needed between Iowa Hawk Blog and 3-Year Letterman. If I know who Iowa Hawk Blog is. I have no idea what prompted this because I've been off and on. Like, I've been mostly off Twitter since early November, but I've just started to resurface and read it again. But obviously I know who 3-Year Letterman is. And if that dude is involved, I definitely want to know about it.
So I mean, Iowa Hawk, David Burge is his name, and he's a writer, and he's been on Twitter, one of the funniest guys on Twitter for a long, long time. And he and 3-Year Letterman have found common cause on some issues here lately, and apparently, according to Iowa Hawk, there will be a summit, and it'll be epic. It just absolutely will be epic. Two great tastes that taste great together, and it's just gonna. I mean, it's probably going to break Twitter. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen.
I love it.
And last night, the United States House of Representatives passed a budget that, according to my notes here, will add $19 trillion to the budget deficit over the next 10 years. I actually don't know that math is right or wrong. I haven't.
Well, that's
looked
Thomas
into it.
Massey. That was from the source on that was Thomas Massey.
if Thomas says it, then I'm when it comes there are many things Thomas talks about that I don't agree with and I don't know to be true. But when it comes to budget issues, Thomas Massey tends to know what he's talking about.
But it's $2 trillion less than it could have been, is what the other side is saying, and that's where folks who support the president are saying, look, we're cutting $2 trillion. So DOGE's goals have been met. We're going to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget.
No, you're not. You're not going to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget unless you decide
Oh, ye of little faith.
Unless you decide to cut Social Security, Medicare, and to some degree Medicaid. But the budget instructions for the budget they passed yesterday includes an $880 billion line item for energy and commerce, which everybody is noting is likely going to mean Medicaid. But people keep talking. I heard this because I made Emily, poor girl, my wife suffered yesterday because I made her watch the debate with me over the budget. I had already started watching it. We finished watching it and we watched the vote.
Prayers up for Emily. Man.
Yeah. I'll chip in for the session that you have to go see therapists for that.
Appreciate that.
She must really, Jason, that is just concrete proof, if you didn't know already.
Oh, yeah.
She absolutely loves you.
Yeah.
That she would sit through that. I mean, you got a good one there, dude.
We had to get through 2 votes to get to that last vote, and she watched the entirety of the vote with me until we knew they were going to pass the budget resolution. But the $880 billion, Republicans kept saying, "Oh, that doesn't mean Medicaid. That doesn't mean Medicaid." Yes, it does. That's in their committee. That's the committee of jurisdiction, and yes, it does. But I will note real fast: does anybody want to take a gander or guess at how much money comes from improper payments from Medicaid on an annual basis?
$2 trillion.
FY.
That's the number of the day there. Yeah.
This is not a good look for House Republicans and Senate Republicans if they do it too.
Well, yeah. Well, first, 2 quick thoughts. First of all, to pick it up where Jason left off, I am all for rooting out, going line by line through every department.
Yep.
This is stuff we don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. Blah, blah, blah. Do it. Absolutely do it. You have to change the structure and the direction, and you have to trim back what all these agencies do, or you're, as Jason pointed out, you're not going to make any substantial change. You're just not. You're going to trim around the edges, and that's fine, but you're not. And so secondly, I just look, this is kind of in a different direction. Speaker Mike Johnson, it seems to me everybody doubts him. He'll never be able to do anything. Oh, he's in danger. They're going to boot him out. He can't get the job done, and he keeps getting the job done. They passed this thing somehow with duct tape and baling wire. He held the Republican caucus together and passed this thing. Now he's got a big challenge coming up because they got the continuing resolution is looming, right? He's got a big, but I think he's going to get it. He's going to get it done.
Federal government runs out of funding on March 14th.
Eyes of March are coming, but I think he's going to get it done because somehow by miracle he keeps this crazy caucus together and they get stuff like that done.
I am curious whether he can get it done if Democrats, because there are vulnerable Democrats who will vote for this thing. I do predict that if it gets through the House, it will pass the Senate because there are too many vulnerable Democrats who don't want a government shutdown. That being said, they're not going to get a full year. Well, I shouldn't say they're not. I would be surprised if they get a full year appropriations package done, but the CR is very much a possibility. It seems to be the most likely possibility at this point. That's a conversation for another day. We are out of time. Scott is staring lasers
glaring at us for
so
Jason and I who had 2 topics.
Every week we thank the people who reach into their pockets and voluntarily sign up to be a Patreon. You too can join them by going over to patreon.com/peachpundit, signing up for one of our tiers. As little as $5, you can support the podcast on a voluntary basis. If you want to go to the $10 level, you could have joined John Vestal in the chat. He's in there right now. telling us that he just gave Emily's info to Jill, who's going to get a golden retriever puppy to the Pye family.
You two can harass Jason in the chat.
Yeah,
at that level.
And just tickle me and Buzz the entire time while Pye looks in exasperation. But here are the people we call the people who rock. Ryan Purvis, Ron Daniels, Jordan Reed, our anonymous contributor, Stuart Wilkinson, James Hall, Ryan Graham, Benjamin Hurst, Reed Powell, John Vestal, Shannon Ferguson, Hank Burnham, Tony West and our friends at Americans for Prosperity, Ari Schaefer, Sam Thomas, Mike Bucher, Colin Martin, Jeff Cobble, and Bo Brannon. Thank you all for helping us make this real. We're incredibly grateful. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time